Hello again, it's Jason Godbey from No Rest for the Weekend here in the studio alongside Eric McClanahan. And I just saw the re-release of Hearts of Darkness, a Filmmaker's Apocalypse. It's a documentary about the making of Francis Ford Coppola's film Apocalypse Now, which came out in 1979, and the horrific experience that it was making this movie in the Philippines. 238 days of principal photography. This is a movie that I essentially grew up with. It came out in the early, I want to say it came out like 91 or 92. And I was at an age where I was like in college and I was studying film and I was acting and doing stuff. And it was one of those films that just had like a seminal impression on me. Like one of those things that it's transformative for a young person who wants to be an artist. The film, if you haven't seen it, which everybody should, the Philippines footage is largely shot by Coppola's wife, Eleanor, who passed away a couple of years ago. She is with him and actually records conversations with him without his knowledge. And she originally did this for her diary that she kept throughout the making of the film. And we get to hear her voiceover as she reads bits of the diary. And we also get to hear Francis, without a filter, talking about what he's going through. And it's a lot. One of the things that they talk about in the film is the mystery that is Marlon Brando.
Right. Yeah, that's the big part. That's the thing that gets butts in seats.
Yeah.
It's like, let's talk about how hard it is to work with Marlon Brando.
Well, so the film itself, Apocalypse Now, is a retelling of the book Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. It's set in Vietnam. It's a loose retelling. Yeah. It's not a strict retelling. Captain Willard, played by Martin Sheen, has to take a small Navy boat upriver to go find Colonel Kurtz, played by Marlon Brando, who has basically gone insane and sort of become lord over a local tribe that's in Cambodia where they're not supposed to be, and he's doing crazy stuff. The film about the making of the film, to me, was more interesting than Apocalypse Now itself.
Wow.
I was fascinated by the process of movie making. And they talked to people in present day, which back then was the 90s. So they talked to Coppola, they talked to Eleanor Coppola, they talked to some of the stars of the film, including Martin Sheen, who went through his own transformative experience during the film. Another big talking point of the film is that 36-year-old, 3-pack-a-day smoker Martin Sheen ended up having a heart attack in the Philippines. To the point where he almost died, and that almost killed the movie. Coppola put his own money in the movie, several $1 million of his own money, because he had amassed an estate from making the Godfather films and winning Oscars and so forth. So he was rich, he was powerful. This was a blank check movie, as we understand it. He's there in the Philippines. His main star has a heart attack. Marlon Brando, who was getting paid $3 million, he's supposed to work for 3 weeks, getting paid $1 million a week. Coppola sends him $1 million in advance. He's saying, I don't know if I can show up if you don't shoot the end of the movie right away. And Coppola's arguing with his reps and going back and forth. And he's like, hey, if I don't get... He's like, are you telling me that Brando would take $1 million and just not show up? And they're, people... It's that type of situation. And then, the whole thing is based on Heart of Darkness. Brando gets there. He has not read Heart of Darkness. and they're going into like all of these talk sessions. They end up like improvising basically the rest of the movie. This is not the way to make a movie. Nobody should make a movie like this ever. The only reason they made it in the Philippines was because this was 77, 78. It's about Vietnam. Vietnam had just ended, and they needed to show the military. Like, they need helicopters. They need military stuff. They're not getting that in America. Nobody, no part of the military, no studio really wanted to touch this movie.
Yeah.
Originally, you find out through the course of the documentary in the beginning when it was being developed, it was a script by John Milius, the great John Milius, who wrote such hits as Red Dawn and Conan the Barbarian.
And Jaws?
One of the most manly dudes ever.
Yeah.
And was told by Francis Ford Coppola, to do this adaptation of Heart of Darkness. Nobody could adapt this thing, so it was naturally the first thing he tried. Originally, they wanted to shoot the movie in Vietnam, like a documentary. And he's like, you wouldn't, like college kids who were trying to do everything and anything to stay out of the war were willing to carry like lights and sound equipment over like minefields. And the studio backed out because they thought they'd all be murdered, like they'd all be killed,
Yeah.
which they would have been. He's like, and Mingus goes, he's like, we would have been there like right in time for the Tet Offensive, So George Lucas was originally supposed to do it, and when they asked George Lucas about it, he's like, yeah, that was John's idea. So it's a really interesting, and it's also, there's other documentaries also about that time, So these guys come in and they disrupt everything, and he goes to make this movie. He's in the Philippines. At one point, a typhoon hits the Philippines, and it lasts a long time as typhoon, and they have to go back home, and they come back to completely destroyed sets. At one point before they left, Coppola wanted to film in the typhoon, which Larry Fishburne, who is he's a teenager in the film, then now Lawrence Fishburne, then called Larry Fishburne, he said, the rain was hitting you so hard it hurt. Like mud up to your knees. Like they were trying to make a movie like this. Again, do not try this at home. As a young man, as in my formative years, I thought this is the bravest, most courageous. This guy is a true artist. He's going to make his movie. And I was just so inspired by that. I was also inspired by Eleanor Coppola and the fact that she was there with him shooting this stuff. And, I have since worked behind the scenes as a behind-the-scenes videographer and photographer. And I think about her when I do that. But, don't try to make a movie like this, kids. It's like the greatest example of how not to make a movie, but it's still a great movie. Like it won the Palme d'Or, it won Oscars. It's a great film. It's one of the defining films of Coppola's filmography, and they've redone it. There's like a Redux version that's even longer. They put in deleted scenes, but the original theatrical version was saved in editing, and there's a great voiceover by Martin Sheen in it that just gives it this really classic, timeless type of thing. Brando, despite being a total crazy pants to work with, is amazing in the film. Like, he's terrific. All of his dialogue is improv, and there's times where he's improving with Martin Sheen and Dennis Hopper, who was also crazy. You feel so much for this guy because at one point, Coppola is like, I'm thinking of shooting myself. Like he's like, maybe I could fall off this thing. It won't kill me, but it'll paralyze me, and I won't be able to finish the movie. But meantime, he's got, he's mortgaged his house, and he's got all this money into the film. So again, not a great practice. Do not try this at home. But it's the greatest movie about the making of a movie ever made. And we did a list a while back during the pandemic of documentaries about movies, and this was number one. Spoilers, this was number one because it's the greatest documentary about the making of a movie ever. So if you get a chance to see it, it's a 4K restored edition. I think it's going to do a limited release. I saw it at the Film Forum, but catch it on Blu-ray or wherever they decide to release it. If you haven't seen it, see Apocalypse Now, and then see this. It's the greatest.
This is the BTRP Media Network.